All right, let's dive right in. Today we're looking at, well, football, obviously, but specifically this young Moroccan player, Hamza Igamane.
Yeah, he's been making headlines lately.
Definitely been making headlines, scored a pretty impressive goal against Tottenham in the Europa League, no less.
Big game, big goal.
Huge. So we're looking at this article. It's called Watch HL Unknown Talent Igamane Shocks the World with a Goal Against Tottenham.
Catchy title.
Right? Gets you interested. And honestly, it lives up to the hype.
Oh, absolutely. This goal, it's something else.
Okay, so picture this. Match day 6 of the Europa League. Rangers, their Scottish team, up against Tottenham, massive Premier League club.
And the Europa League, just for anyone who might not be totally familiar, it's basically like, think Champions League, but a step down.
Right, the second tier. So already you've got that underdog element.
Definitely. Rangers going up against a giant like Tottenham.
Exactly. So second half, things are heating up. And Igamon, this 22-year-old striker, gets a long ball past him in the box.
And what he does next is just, well, magic.
Seriously, the article calls it like a highlight reel moment. No exaggeration.
So much skill, so much composure, the way he controlled the ball, created space, and then, bam, past the keeper. Clinical.
Against Tottenham's goalkeeper, too. No small feat.
Right. And this is a young player, relatively unknown, going up against, well, Tottenham. I think the pressure was immense.
Before this, most people hadn't even heard of this guy, right? Hamza Igamane?
Nope, not at all. But, and here's the interesting thing, even before this goal, he was valued at 24 million euros.
24 million. That's serious money, especially for someone who wasn't, a household name.
Yeah, it really shows you the kind of potential people saw in him. A player's valuation is basically what a club would have to pay to buy him, right?
So like a price tag.
Exactly. And to put that into perspective, some of the biggest names in football, their valuations are in the hundreds of millions.
Wow. Okay. So even before this goal, experts were already thinking he was something special. So what's the story here? Where did this guy come from?
Well, Igamane, he actually started his career with Rangers back in 2024.
Okay. And for those of us who maybe don't follow Scottish football as closely, fill us in. Who are Rangers?
Legendary club, passionate fans, attacking style of play. They've historically dominated Scottish football.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Big club. And Igamane, from what I've read, he's been doing really well in the Scottish Premiership, scoring goals left and right.
He has. And that's not easy. The Scottish Premiership is a tough league.
It is, yeah. And what makes him even more interesting, I think, is he can play in multiple positions, right? Central striker, out wide, kind of all over.
That's right. He's not just a one-position player.
That's got to be valuable, right? That kind of versatility.
It's hugely valuable, especially in modern football. Tactically, it means he can fit into different formations, different systems. It gives his manager a lot of options.
So you've got a young player who's proving himself in a tough league, scores this unbelievable goal against a Premier League giant in a major European competition, and he's versatile. No wonder everyone's talking about him.
Right. He's suddenly on everyone's radar.
So what does this mean for his future? I mean, you got to think bigger clubs are going to be interested now, right?
Absolutely. This goal puts him on the map globally. A statement performance. Especially the Premier League. They love snapping up promising young talent.
I can imagine. But Rangers are probably going to want to keep him, right?
They definitely see him as a key part of their future, and they've already locked him down with a long-term contract.
Oh, okay. What does that mean exactly? A long-term contract. I'm not totally up on all the contract stuff in football.
Well, it basically means both the club and the player are committed. It gives the player stability, knowing he's there for a while, and it protects the club's investment, making it much harder for other teams to try and buy him.
So Rangers are in a good position to keep him, even if there's a lot of interest from other clubs. But what about Igamane? What if he did make a move, say, to the Premier League? What kind of challenges, what kind of opportunities would he face?
That's a great question. Because the Premier League, it's a whole other level. Arguably the most competitive league in the world. Faster pace, more pressure, the media scrutiny is crazy.
I can imagine. A whole different bowl game. So is he ready for that kind of jump? I mean, he's young. Could he handle it?
Well, that's where things get interesting. He's clearly talented.
Yeah.
And that goal against Tottenham, it shows he can handle the big stage, at least for a moment. But the Premier League, it's a whole season of big stages, week after week.
Right, that consistency. This article actually talks about that. It also mentions the role of luck in a player's career. I thought that was interesting. You have the talent, the hard work, but sometimes it feels like you need a bit of luck to really make it to the top.
You're right. There's a whole other layer to this story that we need to explore.
Yeah. Was Igamane's rise to fame just skill and hard work, or did luck play a part? And what does this tell us about scouting? How do we find these hidden gems? We'll be looking into all that right after this.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. It's kind of crazy to think about the role of luck in football sometimes. Like we always talk about the hard work, the dedication, all that.
Yeah, the hours on the pitch, all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But sometimes it really does feel like it takes that bit of luck, that one lucky break.
To really kickstart things.
Yeah, like a catalyst. And this goal, Igamane against Tottenham, it felt like one of those moments.
Totally. One goal against a top team, massive match. That kind of exposure, it changes everything.
For sure. So it's like a spotlight suddenly hits them, everyone's paying attention.
The article even talks about like hidden talents emerging from, well, seemingly nowhere,
Right. Makes you wonder how many other players are out there just like him.
waiting for their moment.
Exactly. And it makes you think about scouting. Like, do we miss these players sometimes?
Are we looking in the wrong places?
Maybe. Maybe we're too focused on the big academies, the usual suspects.
And Igamane, if he hadn't scored that goal, would we even be talking about him right now?
Good question. Would he be on the radar of Premier League clubs? Doubt it.
It's wild how one moment can change everything.
Timing is everything, they say.
Yeah,
And his timing was perfect.
but, we can't forget about the skill, right? Luck might have played a part, but he still had to finish that chance.
Oh, absolutely. The article calls it, what was it, a moment of individual brilliance or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And they talk about how consistently he's been performing for Rangers.
Right. It's not just a fluke.
So he has the talent, now he has the attention. What happens next?
That's the big question, isn't it? Does he stay with Rangers, keep developing, or does he make that jump to a bigger league?
Risk versus reward.
Exactly. And the article doesn't really give us any answers. They say Rangers want to keep him, which makes sense, especially with that long-term contract. But they also say the Premier League might be too tempting.
Yeah. That pull is strong. It's like that next level.
For sure. It's a classic dilemma for young players, right?
Mm.
Stay where you're comfortable, where you're loved, where you're succeeding, or take a risk. Go for the biggest stage.
Tough choice. What do you think, from your perspective, what's the best path for a player like Igamane?
Man, it's hard to say. There's no right answer. It depends on him, his personality, his ambition, how much risk he's willing to take.
Some guys thrive under pressure, others need a slower build-up.
Totally. And Igamane, he has that added, wrinkle of being so versatile. We talked about that earlier.
Right, he can play almost anywhere.
Makes him valuable, but also means he needs to think about where he fits best long term. Does he want to be a specialist, or does he embrace that adaptability?
Interesting point. It's not just about the league or the club. It's about finding the right place to grow. It's fun. We're talking about all this, and I keep thinking back to the title of the article, Unknown Talent Igamane Shocks the World. It's such a, I don't know, it's a great title.
It is. It really captures that element of surprise that makes football so exciting. You just never know where the next star will come from.
Could be anywhere. Big academy, small club, a league we don't pay much attention to.
And sometimes it takes that one moment, like this goal, to make everyone realize.
Talent can be found anywhere if you're looking.
Exactly. And once that happens, once the world sees you, that's when the journey really begins.
The expectations change, the pressure's on. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it, whatever he decides to do.
Absolutely. And as we kind of wrap up this part of the deep dive, I think it's important to acknowledge something that the article doesn't really get into. His background. We know he's Moroccan. We know he started with Rangers, but that's about it.
Yeah. We don't know his story, how he got here.
Where did his love for football begin? Who were his mentors? What were the obstacles he had to overcome?
It's like we're only seeing the surface, right?
Right. There's a whole story there beneath the surface.
Maybe someday we'll get to hear it.
I hope so. Because those stories, those personal journeys, they often hold the most valuable lessons.
They remind us that success isn't always a straight line.
Bumps along the way.
Exactly. It's those challenges that make us who we are. Igamane's story is still being written, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me too. And as we, move on here, I think it's worth asking, what does this story tell us about talent, about opportunity, about, how much of this is luck and how much is design?
Big questions. And as our listeners follow along with his career, maybe those are the questions they can think about. It's amazing, isn't it? One goal. And we're talking about scouting, talent, the whole, system.
Yeah. I think it shows you how powerful these stories can be, these football stories. I mean, it's not just about the game itself, right?
It's the human part of it. The stories behind the players.
Exactly. And Igamine, he's just starting out, really. But his story, it already touches on so much. Ambition, resilience, the fact that success, well, it's not always straightforward.
It's relatable, right? Anyone who's chased a dream can connect with that.
Yeah, for sure. And his story, it really challenges how we think about talent in football. He didn't come from one of those, like, famous academies.
He wasn't some wonder kid we'd been hearing about for years.
Right. He just kind of quietly went about his business, got better, and then bam, that goal.
Out of nowhere, it seemed like. Makes you think, how many other guys are out there just like him?
Waiting for their shot. And it makes you wonder, luck versus, planning.
Was Igamane always going to be this good, or was it just right place, right time?
Tough to say. But the article, they mentioned his work ethic, his attitude. That's going to count for something, right?
Oh, definitely. It's not enough to just have the talent. You need that drive, that belief in yourself.
Especially when things get tough. You got to keep going.
And sometimes it's those tough times, those setbacks that really make you who you are.
Feel that resilience.
So to wrap things up here, I think the big takeaway is keep your eyes open. You never know where the next star will come from.
It could be anyone. So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep believing in the power of sport.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all for today's deep dive. Until